Hey everyone, you're live with Necee. I am your host, Opal Bailey, and I have with me Jason Kochen from Destiny Christian Church. And hey, Jason.
Hey, Opal. Glad to be here this morning.
Thank you for coming. Hey, I'm so excited because I get to find out all about you today.
Oh, thanks.
So can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. I have been in missions for about 15 years, and I've had the pleasure of traveling to about 22 different countries, mostly in Asian countries, and I've gotten to backpack and travel to many remote places and see God do some miraculous things.
So when you say how did you get started in missions? Did you have that desire as a little kid, or how did all that work?
Yeah, well, when I was in college, I got saved during my freshman year, and it was a Baptist college ministry, and they set a real strong foundation for the Word inside of us. And part of that foundation was evangelism, so we did some campus evangelism and ministry, and I'll have to tell you that story maybe also. That's kind of a funny one. But I started to fundraise for my first mission trip, and through the Baptist ministry, and they had a heart for missions, and I realized as they just shared their heart, and I heard testimonies of missionaries and people that had traveled around the world, I felt a drawing in my heart to go there as well, go into the remote places and go to distant lands, and as a result of my going, I had tremendous testimonies, and I've seen God just grow that deeper passion inside me for that, and it's just something that's never left me.
Awesome. So can you tell us a story you said that you want to share that's funny?
Well, yeah, we were on a cargo ship in Papua New Guinea, so there was no more passenger boats left. All the seats had been sold, so the only thing left was a cargo ship. So when we got to the dock where you'd buy the seats, there was tons of people there. And what happened was we bought the tickets, but we had come very late. And so they were just about to start boarding the ship, and there was already a huge line of people that had lined up. But because the people were just so amazing and gracious, they saw the foreigners, who were myself and my friend, two white guys in a sea of black people, and they all, like the entire crowd, like waved us up to the front. And we didn't understand what they were doing at the time. Mm-hmm. But what we found out later was that on the ship, there was only like 15 beds where you could like lay down and sleep. And then once those 15 beds were taken, then everybody just had to go throughout the ship and find some place like on a pallet of, whatever, and just find a little corner where they could kind of like camp out. So what they had done was they pushed us up to the front of the line so that they assured that we got a bed to lay in.
Wow.
And we were like blown away, and so I wish I could have told them that if they came to my country, they would experience that same thing. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so we had hours and hours on this ship because it was a cargo ship and it wasn't very fast. It was a kind of a putt-putt engine, and we're out to sea, and there's just nothing to do, and there's definitely a communication barrier. They have what they call a pidgin language. So it's almost like a trade language. So you can communicate like numbers and colors and things like that. But when it comes to deeper spiritual things, it's a little bit more difficult to try to explain using this pidgin language because it's very limited. So I'll give you an example. To say goodbye to somebody, they would say, "Look at me behind." So like they're looking at your behind, So it's kind of terms like that they use, and it sounds funny to us, you know what I'm saying? But it's something that they can understand and very simple. Okay? So we get on this ship and we have nothing to do. So there's up in the bow of the ship is where everybody gathers because there's a nice cool breeze out there. It's kind of hot, and the rest of the ship there's not much airflow. So everybody congregates on the front bow. So everybody's out there just looking out, at the sea. There's really nothing to see except for ocean. But just enjoying the cool breeze. And so all of a sudden, I just got like an inspiration on the inside, and I started to put together a skit using the people that were up there. So it was mostly men, and so one of the guys had a jacket, and I put his jacket over his head like it was his hair. So I made him the woman, and then I had another guy was, the man, and I told this amazing love story about this man and this woman, and what they would do for love, what love would do for the other, and then I kind of made that connection to our relationship and our love that God has for us. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then they clapped, and they really enjoyed it, and they were like, "Do another one, do another one," and I'm just like, "I don't have another one." But just things like that you can't plan for,
Yeah.
But they just end up being so much fun, and it's just kind of like a walk with the Holy Spirit. He gives you those opportunities, and but that also opened up more of a relational connection with those guys. And so as we spent more time with them, shared food and shared time, they really opened themselves up to us, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And told us a little bit more about their life, the best they could, with the English that they knew. But they told us about their children and, all kinds of things like that. But that's what it's about. It's about making a genuine connection with people, not just checking a box or seeing hands raised for salvation. That's definitely a very important part of it. Mm-hmm. But the most important part of a mission is making that relational connection, connecting people, yourself to people, mm-hmm. but also, more importantly, connecting those people with God and mm-hmm. a relationship with Him.
Yeah, and they see that through us.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how they recognize who God is.
And they can tell when your motives are not pure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm amazed in our world how much of our communication is nonverbal, mm-hmm. and how, mm-hmm. as humans, we really depend on so many nonverbal cues and communication. They can tell by the look in your eye and by the kinds of words and your tone of voice, how you're approaching them. Are you approaching them in love? Are you approaching them, trying to, lord over them or control them? You know what I'm saying? And they naturally respond to that, mm-hmm. what they're perceiving through those, nonverbal things. Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
So was this your first mission trip?
Yeah, that was, I had been to India before, okay. Just on a film team. We were doing a video for the Marathi people group. It was a people group in India that they were raising funds to get Bible translated in their language and all kinds of stuff like that. So I just ran around with a film crew most of the time, but I got a chance to see so many different places because I was part of the film crew, Yeah. We got to cities, we got to villages, and we got to travel all over the country of India and see. I mean, for that to be my first mission trip was kind of like the bottom of the barrel because it's, some of those areas are so in poverty, if they work in the city as a taxi cab driver, they sleep in their taxi cab. That's their home. You know what I'm saying? Or they have a little tarp on the street where their family is while they're driving. You know what I'm saying? And then the car becomes their bed at night. I mean, it's just crazy the way that they have to live. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if they have a restaurant on the street, that's also their home where they live. You know what I'm saying? It's like everything is right there.
It's one, all in one. It's not exactly. It's not that you're working and you go home. That is your home. Right. Everything is included. Wow.
Yeah. So seeing that in India was an amazing wake up for me. Like having been sheltered in my life, not knowing how the rest of the world really lives. You know what mm-hmm. I'm saying? Most of the world lives in a much more impoverished conditions than we have. Even what we would consider poverty in the USA is way, it's way above what mm-hmm. most people are living their lives like, in other countries, but they wouldn't consider themselves poor, because they value the relationship part more than they do the physical, tangible, material things.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because they have that family, they have the time, they don't have
right.
the distractions
right. Yeah,
that
exactly.
we have to keep them from connecting to their families. And they probably have better neighboring relationships too. Everybody know everybody and mm-hmm. can help out and stuff like that too. So did you go through any training when you was interested in even going with the camera crew or when you started going into missions yourself or?
Nope. I didn't have any formal training. I had just had an interest and a genuine desire. And so I knew some folks that were involved in missions and they just kind of took me under their wing. and opened up my eyes to see what it was like out there. And so no formal training, but I have had, a lot of experience traveling with other experienced missionaries and learning how to operate and learning what not to do, making mistakes. But so no formal training. But my experiences and just my willingness to go. One of the longest trips that I took was a 10-month trip, and we just had a small backpack, and we just went from city to city, village to village. We had targeted some specific people groups that we wanted to reach in each country.
Where did you go?
Well, we started out in Papua New Guinea, and we were there for 2 months, and that was the most amazing country, just because there's no franchise there. It's very rural. It's not really built up, and the people are just wonderful. And they just value the relational part, of our humanity, and so we spent 2.5 months there, traveling all over several different islands, preaching on the streets. And then after that, we went into Singapore and Malaysia. And from Malaysia, I don't know if you're familiar with Borneo, but it's an island out apart from Malaysia. Half of it is controlled by Indonesia and half of it is controlled by Malaysia. So we were on the Malaysian side of Borneo. And we hired a guy who was a local and had a boat, and he took us up this particular river that we identified, and we just went from village to village along the river, like preaching the gospel at each village. During the daytime, we would teach the guy who was our guide the word, and then in the evening time, we would go into a village, and we would share with the village what we had taught him during the afternoon.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we would spend some time with them. Tea is a large part of their culture, so we'd have tea with them, spend some time out in the fields. A lot of the villages along that river grew pepper, so we would go out with them and harvest pepper and help them, dry out the pepper and stuff when we had time with them. So we went up each of the villages and just had an amazing time. And just we were willing to do it. We had no set plans leading up there. We just said, let's just go and see what God will do,
Yeah.
And I think that helped me, not just in a big picture like with missions do that, but I think it helped me in my everyday life here in the States too. Be willing and open and to say, Lord, what do you want to do today? Lord, what kind of an adventure? The adventure isn't just for when I'm overseas in another country. I want to have that adventure with you all the time,
Yeah.
And so having my eyes opened and seeing him move when I was traveling helped me also take that home to say, Lord, what about the adventure here? Where's your leading? Where are you leading me to today? What miraculous things are you going to do through me today? And so we did that for 10 months from country to country. We did a lot of Asian countries, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, China. We went up to Tibet, and down in Nepal was our last country of that 10-country span for 10 months. And then when we came back to the United States, my mom's husband had passed away, and they had a family business, and they also had a home. And so my mom was left by herself to manage the business, and the home needed some repairs and things. And so when I came home, I went back to my mom's house to help her with all of that. So we got the business organized and ready to be sold, and did some things on the house and kind of got things, back to where they should be. So that took about a year after I came back from that 10-month backpacking trip. And then I was searching. I knew, okay, now that season is done, I've helped my family back. My mom's in a better place. I knew it was time for me to get back involved, but I didn't know where. Because the organization that I had traveled with doing the backpacking, there really wasn't a place for me at that time because I had been away for a year and, kind of thing. So they said, why don't you check out Overland Missions? They're right there in Florida, which is where my mom was living. And so I took a drive about 2.5 hours to the other side of Florida